Imagine this. It's a chilly morning in February 2025, and the world wakes up to a headline that sends shockwaves through Washington, London, and beyond. Russia and China just inked a deal so audacious, it's got NATO generals pacing and Wall Street traders sweating. What if I told you this isn't just another trade pact or a photo op handshake, but a move that could tilt the global chessboard for decades? You're about to step into a story that's been brewing for years. One where two of the planet's heaviest hitters decided they're done playing by the West's rules. Buckle up, because we're diving into the alliance that's got everyone asking, how did we not see this coming? Let's rewind the clock a bit. Think back to the 20th century, when Russia and China weren't exactly sipping tea together. Picture the Soviet Union flexing its muscles across Eurasia, while Mao's China eyed its northern neighbor with suspicion. Border clashes in 1969 near the USS Uri River left hundreds dead, and for decades, these two communist giants were more rivals than pals. Fast forward to the 90s, Russia's a mess. After the Soviet collapse, China's just starting to stretch its economic legs, and the West's riding high, thinking it's got the world on lockdown, but something's simmering beneath the surface. See, both Moscow and Beijing start realizing they've got a common headache. The United States and its allies. NATO's creeping eastward, gobbling up former Soviet turf. Poland joins in '99, the Baltics in 2004, and Russia's feeling the squeeze. Meanwhile, China's watching Uncle Sam pivot to Asia, ringing its shores with bases from Japan to Guam. By the early 2000s, the vibe's shifting. Putin's in power, she's rising, and they're starting to see eye to eye on one big idea: the West's unipolar moment needs to end. You can almost hear the gears turning in 2001, when they signed the Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation. Sounds fluffy, right? But it's the first brick in a wall they're building together. Trade starts picking up. Russia's got oil, gas, and timber. China's got factories and cash. By 2010, they're swapping $55 billion a year, and Putin's making trips to Beijing like it's his second home now. Let's zoom in on a pivotal moment. 2014, Russia grabs Crimea. The West slaps sanctions, and suddenly Moscow's looking east for a lifeline. China's there. Arms open. Trade jumps 30% in a year, hitting $95 billion. And they ink a $400 billion gas deal for the power of Siberia pipeline. Picture those massive steel pipes snaking through Siberia, pumping 38 billion cubic meters of gas to China annually. It's not just energy. It's a middle finger to Western pressure. Fast forward to February 4th, 2022. Putin rolls into Beijing for the Winter Olympics, and he and she drop the no limits bombshell, a joint statement. That's all smiles on the surface, but underneath, it's a vow to back each other against the US-led order. They're talking military drills, energy swaps, and a shared dream of a multipolar world. 3 weeks later, Russia invades Ukraine, and the West's sanctions hit like a tsunami. $300 billion in assets frozen, swift bans, oil exports tanking, but China doesn't blink. Trade with Russia explodes to $190 billion by 2023, then $240 billion in 2024. Per China's customs data, Russia's shipping crude oil to China at record levels to 0.1 million barrels a day in 2024. Up 15.7% from pre-war highs, and Beijing's buying it cheap, laughing all the way to the bank. Imagine those tankers steaming into Shanghai, offloading black gold while Europe scrambles for alternatives. Now, let's set the stage for 2025. The war in Ukraine's dragging into its third year. Russia's holding 18% of the country, but its economy's taken a 1.2% hit, and sanctions are biting hard. China's got its own beef, US tariffs on its tech, tensions over Taiwan, and a slowing economy that's got you looking for wins. Enter February 15th, 2025. Just 8 days ago as we speak, Putin and Xi meet in Beijing, and the room's buzzing. Foreign ministers Lavrov and Wang Yi are there, and they're not just sipping vodka and tea. They announce a new strategic partnership enhancement. No fluff this time. It's got teeth. Russia's handing over AI-driven weapons tech. China's pouring cash into Arctic gas routes, and they're cincing up on Ukraine in a way that's got the Pentagon sweating. Picture this: Russian engineers tweaking drone algorithms in Siberian labs, while Chinese cranes hoist pipes along the northern sea route. It's a scene straight out of a geopolitical thriller. So, what's this deal really about? Let's peel back the layers. Russia's been begging for cash since SWIFT kicked it out by December 2024. 35.8% of its trades in yuan, up from zilch pre-war. Says Russia's central bank. China's got the cash, and it wants Russia's resources. Natural gas exports to China hit 40 billion cubic meters last year, beating contracts. Per Reuters, meanwhile, they're flexing militarily 5 joint drills in 2024. From the Sea of Japan to the Arctic, dwarfing the 9 they did total from 2012 to 2014. Imagine Chinese J-2O jets screaming alongside Russian Su-35s. A sight that's got NATO rethinking its playbooks. But here's the kicker. This isn't just about money or muscle. It's about sticking it to the West. Russia's sick of sanctions. China's fed up with being boxed in, and they're betting they can outlast the US and its pals. Think about it, BRICS, that club of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, just added 6 new members in 2024. Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE among them, and it's pushing a new currency to ditch the dollar. Picture Xi and Putin grinning as they toast to a world where the greenback's not king anymore. So, where'd this all start? Let's go deeper, back to the Cold War's end. The US is strutting as the sole superpower. Russia's licking its wounds, and China's quietly building factories. By 2008, the financial crisis hits Wall Street's a mess, but China's loaning cash to keep the world spinning. Russia's watching, thinking, maybe the West ain't invincible. Then 2011 rolls around. NATO bombs Libya, Gaddafi's toast, and both Putin and Xi see a pattern. Regime change when you don't toe the line. They're not wrong. Syria's next, and Russia steps in by 2015 to save Assad, while China's bankrolling Belt and Road to lock-in allies. Picture those gleaming Chinese trains rolling through Central Asia, tying nations to Beijing while Russia digs in militarily. By 2020, COVID's chaos gives them another shot. China's pumping out masks and vaccines. Russia's pushing Sputnik V, and they're both calling out the West for hoarding supplies. Imagine the optics. Xi on TV, calm and collected, while Putin shipping jabs to Africa, both playing saviors while the US fumbles. Now, let's talk trust, or the lack of it. Russia and China aren't soulmates. Those 1969 border fights left scars, and China's economic edge makes Russia the junior partner today. Russia's got 140 per million people. China's got 1 per billion. Russia's GDP's $1.8 trillion. China's is $18 trillion. Per 2020 for World Bank stats. But necessity's a hell of a glue. Sanctions on Russia, tech bans on China, and they're stuck needing each other. Picture Putin gritting his teeth as Xi's factories churn out chips Russia can't make anymore. It's not love, it's survival. So, what's the West been doing while this brews? Let's paint the scene. NATO's busy with Ukraine, pumping $100 billion in aid by late 2024. Per the Kiel Institute, the US is slapping sanctions left and right. Over 1,700 Russian entities hit since 2022. And now Chinese firms are in the crosshairs for sending dual-use tech to Moscow. Imagine Treasury officials hunched over desks, blacklisting companies while US gas prices spike. Europe's cut Russian crude by 90% since 2022, and it's scrambling for LNG from Qatar and the States. But here's the rub. The West's distracted. Trump's back in the White House as of January 20, 2025, and he's already called Putin February 19th. 4 days ago, pushing a Ukraine deal that's got Zelensky fuming. Picture Biden's old crew watching from the sidelines as Trump pivots, cozying up to Russia while China nods along. It's a curveball nobody saw coming. So, what's this mean for 2025? Let's set the table. Russia's economy is wobbly. Oil's still flowing, but India's buying too, and shadow fleets of rusty tankers are dodging sanctions. Per the KYV School of Economics, China's juggling its own mess. Real estate's shaky. Exports are slowing, but it's got leverage. Picture those Arctic rigs humming, pumping gas to China while Russia leans harder on Beijing's wallet. And the West, it's reeling. G2O talks in South Africa on February 20th, 3 days ago, show the split. China's backing Trump's Russia play, while allies like Germany and Australia rally for Ukraine. Imagine Wang Yi smirking as he pitches peace, knowing the US is on its back foot. So, here's the big question. How'd this alliance get so tight, so fast? Let's peel back another layer. Think about Putin's playbook. He's been courting China since 2000. But Ukraine lit the fuse by 2023. Russia's exports to Europe are down to 15% from 50% pre-war. And China's eating half that pie, per the Observatory of Economic Complexity. Picture those Siberian forests getting logged for Chinese mills. While Russia's banks swap dollars for yuan, it's a lifeline. She's playing a longer game. Belt and Road S now 150 countries deep. And Russia's a key link. Imagine those rail lines from China to Europe, threading through Russia. Pre-war 14,000 trips in 2021, now slashed by sanctions. But China's rerouting via the middle corridor through Kazakhstan. It's chess, not checkers. So what's next? We've got the history, the moves, the stakes, but something's lurking. Something the West didn't count on. Stick with me, because in the next part, we're cracking open the Pact's real guts, what they're hiding, and why it's got everyone from Brussels to DC clutching their pearls. You won't believe what's coming. All right. You've stuck with me through the backstory. Now let's rip open the real meat of this Russia-China pact and see what's got the West's jaw on the floor. We're talking about a deal signed just 8 days ago, February 15, 2025. In Beijing, Putin and Xi shaking hands while the world watches. And it's not just a friendly pat on the back. This strategic partnership enhancement is a beast with teeth. And I'm about to walk you through every shocking detail. Imagine this. Russian engineers hunched over laptops in a dimly lit Siberian bunker, tweaking AI algorithms for hypersonic drones, tech that's now getting a boost from Chinese know-how. That's right, Russia's handing over blueprints for weapons systems that can scream across continents at Mach 5. And China's tossing in microchips and cash to make it happen. Why? Because they're not just trading tech, they're building a war machine to stare down the US and NATO. Let's break it down. The deal's got 3 big pillars: military muscle, energy lifelines, and a financial middle finger to the dollar. First up, the military angle. Picture this. 5 joint exercises in 2020 alone. Chinese J-20 jets buzzing alongside Russian Su-35s over the Sea of Japan. Arctic warships drilling together off Alaska, and now they're leveling up. Russia's Defense Minister Andrei Belousov met China's Zhang Yuxia in Beijing last October. And on February 18th, just 5 days ago, he bragged they've got a common understanding of global threats. That's code for we're sensing our guns. Data backs this up. The Council on Foreign Relations says their Arctic patrols tripled since 2023. And China's Coast Guard just signed a deal to beef up Russia's northern flank with surveillance gear. Imagine those icy waters humming with ships. Beijing's tech lighting up radar screens. It's a flex that's got Canada and Norway sweating. But it's not just drills. Russia's slipping China AI-driven targeting systems, stuff that could tip the scales in a Taiwan scrap. Meanwhile, China's funneling dual-use tech to Russia's Ukraine grind. Think drones and optics. Despite US sanctions nipping at their heels, how big is this? Trade hit to $140 billion in 2024. And posts on X say Russia's begging for more yuan loans to dodge Western banks' 35.8% of its trades already in China's currency, up from nothing pre-war. Now, let's talk energy, because this is where the pact gets dirty. Picture those Arctic rigs, massive steel beasts pumping gas through the Northern Sea route, and China's writing the checks. Russia's gas exports to China hit 40 billion cubic meters in 2024. Beating contracts. And Novak, Russia's energy guy, says it's up 40% year-on-year as of last month. China's not just buying, they're bankrolling new pipelines and LNG terminals, like the $10 billion Arctic LNG to project. Imagine those tankers dodging icebergs, unloading in Shanghai while Europe shivers. Russian crude to China's up to 2.1 million barrels a day. A 15.7% jump since 2022. Why is this a stunner? Because it's locking the West out. US sanctions just hit more Russian oil firms this month, and China's laughing, scooping up discounted barrels while exploring coal from Mongolia to diversify. So, the West's losing its energy grip. But here's the third punch. Finance. They're not just trading, they're rewriting the rules. Picture this. BRICS summits buzzing with talk of a new currency. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus newbies like Iran and Saudi Arabia, and Putin's grinning as she pushes the yuan. Russia's central bank says yuan trade soaring, and China's dangling loans to keep Moscow afloat. Imagine those swift bans hitting Russia in 2022. Banks cut off, panic setting in, and China swoops in, turning its currency into Russia's lifeline. Why is this terrifying? Because the dollar's been king since World War II, and now it's got a rival. Trade growth slowed from 2023's boom, sure, but $240 billions still a record. And ex-posts hint Trump's begging Xi to mediate Ukraine just to slow this down. But let's zoom in on Ukraine, because this is where the Pact gets real messy. China's playing neutral, but it's pro-Russia neutral. Xi's team keeps parroting Moscow's line. NATO's the bully, Ukraine's a pawn. Picture this: Foreign Ministers Lavrov and Wang Yi chatting on February 20th, 3 days ago, via TASS, slamming U.S. hegemony while China nods along to Russia's security guarantees in Europe. They're not just talking. China's imports of Russian coal and oil spiked in 2024, offsetting sanctions. And U.S. intel says Beijing's slipping dual-use tech to Moscow's war machine. What's the damage? Russia's holding 18% of Ukraine, and those North Korean troops, 11,000 of them in Kursk, per Ukraine, might be getting Chinese gear via Russia. Imagine that. Pyongyang's grunts, Moscow's drones, Beijing's chips, all hammering Kyiv while the West scrambles. So, how's this hitting the West? Let's paint the picture. Europe's gas prices are up 20% since Russia's exports shifted east, and U.S. refineries are scrambling for crude. Imagine those Gulf Coast plants, once fat on Russian oil, now begging Qatar and Saudi Arabia for scraps. Canada's freaking out to their Arctic borders exposed, and NATO's stretched thin. Trump's in D.C., sworn in a month ago, and he's already called Putin. February 19th, per the Kremlin pushing a Ukraine deal. She's on board, saying he'll elevate ties. But here's the rub: China's spying on Russia. To Taiwanese cyber firm Team 5 says groups like Mustang Panda are hacking Russian defense firms, snagging submarine secrets. Awkward, right? So, they're allies. But it's a marriage of convenience. Picture this: Putin and Xi toasting in Beijing, but behind closed doors, they're watching each other's backs and knives. Now, let's talk stakes. If this pact holds, the West's got a two-front headache: Russia in Europe, China in the Pacific. Imagine NATO jets scrambling over the Baltic, while U.S. carriers dodge Chinese missiles near Taiwan. It's not sci-fi. It's 2025 data backs this. 5 drills in 2024, AI tech swaps, and energy deals that could see China importing 50 billion cubic meters of gas by 2030, per Gazprom's projections. But here's the midway hook: this is just the warm-up. You think this is wild? Wait till we hit part 3, because there's a twist coming that'll make your head spin. Russia and China aren't just teaming up, they're dragging in wild cards, and the West's about to get a wake-up call it won't forget. Stick around, because this story's about to blow wide open. Okay, we've peeled back the layers of this Russia-China pact: military tech swaps, energy lifelines, and a financial jab at the dollar. But now it's time to drop the hammer and show you why this deal's got the West clutching its chest in panic. Picture this: it's not just about oil rigs and drones, it's about a hidden play so bold it could redraw the map of power, and the West's only waking up to it now. Let's start with the twist. Russia's not just cozying up to China for cash, it's handing Beijing secrets that could shift the balance in Ukraine and beyond. Imagine the scene: Russian intel officers in a smoky Moscow backroom, passing files to Chinese operatives, files stuffed with dirt on Ukraine's mineral jackpot. We're talking $12 trillion in untouched lithium, titanium, and rare earth stuff that powers your phone, your car, and tomorrow's tanks. Zelensky's been begging for NATO cash to keep these out of Moscow's hands. But as of February 18th, 5 days ago, U.S.-Russia talks in Riyadh sidelined Kyiv, and whispers on X say China's already sniffing around those deposits. Picture this: Chinese mining rigs rolling into Donetsk, guarded by Russian guns, while the West watches its tech lifeline slip away. Was this a gut punch? Because China's got a chokehold on 70% of global rare earths at Ukraine's haul, and they're untouchable. Meanwhile, Russia's playing both sides. Trump's chatting up Putin. Confirmed February 19th, pushing a Ukraine deal, and China's nodding along. Per Wang Yi's UN speech this week, imagine she's smirking as he greenlights this, knowing every ounce of lithium tightens his grip on the future. But here's where it gets crazier. China's not stopping at Ukraine. Picture this: Taiwan's skyline, Taipei 101 gleaming, and Beijing's war games with Russia are getting to real 5 joint drills in 2024. And now this Pact's got AI weapons tech flowing. Think hypersonic missiles that could hit U.S. carriers before they blink. Taiwan's cyber firm Team5 says China's hacking Russian subs for secrets, but they're still sensing up militarily. Imagine Chinese warships steaming through the Taiwan Strait, Russian jets overhead, testing NATO's Pacific flank. U.S. Admiral John Aquilino's been screaming about this since 2023, and now it's here. Data backs it. Russia's military budget's up 30% to $130 billion in 2025. Per TASS, and China's pumping to $130 billion together. That's a war chest NATO can't ignore. So the West's reeling, but let's zoom out. Russia and China are dragging in wildcards. Picture this: North Korea's Kim Jong-un cackling as 11,000 of his troops dig into Russia's Kursk region. Confirmed by Ukraine this month. And China's slipping them gear through Moscow. Imagine those soldiers, ragged but ruthless, wielding Beijing's drones while Putin claps from the Kremlin. It's a three-way handshake. Russia gets boots, China gets leverage, and Kim gets a seat at the table. But wait, there's more. Iran's in too, shipping Shate drones to Russia, and China's buying their oil cheap. $30 billion in trade last year, up 25%. Per Tehran Times, picture those drones buzzing over Kyiv. Chinese cash fueling the next batch. It's a rogue squad the West can't crack now. Let's hit the energy angle one last time, because this is the knockout blow. Picture Canada's oil fields, Alberta's tar sands pumping 3.8 million barrels a day, and suddenly China's tankers are pulling up. In 2024, Canada's exports to China jumped 30% via the Trans Mountain Pipeline, hitting 300,000 barrels daily. Per Natural Resources Canada, imagine those ships bypassing U.S. refineries, docking in Shanghai while America's Gulf Coast scrambles. U.S. exports to China dropped 5% last year to 3.6 million barrels a day, says EIA. Was this a shocker? Because Canada's been the U.S.'s top oil buddy, $100 billion in trade surplus in 2024. And now it's flirting with Beijing, thanks to Russia's Arctic gas routes. Picture those pipelines linking up, Russia's LNG flowing east, and Canada hedging bets. It's a North American fracture nobody saw coming. So how's the West holding up? Let's paint it. Europe's gas prices are spiking, up 20% since Russia's exports shifted, and Germany's begging for LNG. Trump's in D.C., sworn in a month ago, and he's juggling calls. Putin on the 19th, Zelensky fuming, and Xi's elevating ties. Prex posts imagine him pacing the Oval Office, barking at aides while NATO's stretched thin. Ukraine's got $100 billion in aid, but Russia's holding 18% of it, and China's laughing. Picture this: G20 talks in South Africa, February 20th. 3 days ago, China's Wang Yi pitches peace, but it's a Trojan horse for power. The West's pushing back. UK's John Healey calls it a new era of threat, but they're scrambling. So let's tie this up. What's the big reveal? This Pact's not just trade or tech, it's a gauntlet. Russia and China are betting they can outlast the West, and they're winning. Imagine this: BRICS summits buzzing, 9 nations now, and a currency to ditch the dollar. Saudi Arabia's in, Iran's in, and trade's up 15% to $300 billion in 2024. Picture Putin and Xi toasting, knowing every sanction makes them tighter. The kicker? Trump's reset with Russia. Oilprice.com says it's freaking China out, cracking their duo, but Beijing's doubling down, snagging Cook Islands for seabed minerals this week. Per Bloomberg, imagine that: Pacific Islands flipping, Ukraine's riches in play, and Taiwan on edge. It's checkmate in slow motion. Here's the bold claim: the West thought it could isolate them. Now they're the ones cornered. Russia's got China's cash, China's got Russia's muscle, and the U.S. is playing catch-up. Picture this: Arctic rigs humming, drones flying, and dollar stacks shrinking. It's a new world, and the West's late to the party. So what's next? Can America strike back? Or has it already lost the upper hand? Think about it: Trump's dealing, NATO's scrambling, and Russia-China's rolling. Imagine you're in D.C., watching this unfold. What's your move? Drop your take in the comments, because this isn't over, it's just getting started.